Ladies and gentlemen, tonight we'll be going over premonitions and deja vu as we have our first guest of the show on my experience with the phenomena. Kick back, get ready for the show.
I got nightmares in my head, I fear that the thoughts build up until I can't hear, that my mind fills up into a creature, and it haunts me somewhere much deeper.
Anxiety, filling up every space, no privacy. And silently, it could build and build until you finally see. Whoa, it's taking over, damn no closure, moving closer. No exposure, I just wanna be a loner. Some can't stay sober, looking over all their shoulders, like moving boulders just to get out of the home. It sucks, I've had enough, I don't wanna feel the stuck under the rug, all my problems that I shove.
I got nightmares in my head, I fear that the thoughts build up until I can't hear, that my mind fills up into a creature, and it haunts me somewhere much deeper. I got nightmares in my head, I fear that the thoughts build up until I can't hear, that my mind fills up into a creature, and it haunts me somewhere much deeper.
Welcome to my experience with the phenomena, episode 2. As you remember, episode 1, we went ahead and covered my experience with the phenomena. We covered UFOs. We covered the orbs that I'm dealing with here. We also covered shadow people, right? Went ahead and showed you some images of that and kind of expressed how I felt and how the phenomena made me feel. That's what this show is about. Now we move into the journey and we bring in our first guest. We're going to have our first guest tonight, which is somebody that you guys may all know, Aloha Dave. He's going to go ahead and talk about his experience, or at least kind of tell the story of his experience with premonitions and deja vu. This is, I feel like it's a conscious part of the phenomena, some of the things that we experience, and I'll kind of end up getting into what premonitions are, is the definition, and also deja vu as well, and how these two things might actually link together. So we'll kind of dive deep into that rabbit hole tonight. I want to go ahead and get ready to see who's in here. I know Mothman stopped by, Kiera as well, T-Bone, Salty D, and of course our guest Aloha Dave. And I'm sure we'll get more to trickle in as the show goes on. But let me go ahead and kind of get this thing started, right? So when we talk about premonitions, and before I get into the actual definition of it, just my thought of a premonition is being able potentially to see something or have an image of something prior to this event taking place, right? And so, the way that I feel about that is that it's potentially a superpower that we have not tapped into. One of the other senses that isn't really listed, right? Because we know we have smell, touch, hearing, sight, and I'm sure I'm missing one, but you get into like sixth senses, seventh, eighth, ninth, and who knows how many senses that we actually have that we haven't unlocked yet. So we'll be diving into some of that tonight because I feel like really laying this out as far as what it is that we experience with the phenomena. There's so many different variations of experiences as it were. And this journey that we're going to go on is actually going to be a good insight into some of the things that people are experiencing, and then it may resonate with you. It may be something that you have experienced yourself that you really don't, that you can't put into words, right? Because this is something that we're learning every day. We know about UFOs. We know there are people who claim to be psychics. We have people who claim to remote view. These are all conscious parts of the phenomena. So I'm going to go ahead and get ready to bring up the slides for today, and we'll go ahead and speak to these. So Once again, my experience with the phenomena. So, looking into this, I kind of want to start with the premonitions part of this, right? Is this a superpower? What is a premonition? I'm sure everyone is, potentially experienced something like this and just may not have thought what it was, right? I mean, you may thought you were dreaming, and thought no more of it. And that's kind of why we want to cover this, because this is actually ends up being a thing. If you talk to a lot of people who have had premonitions, some people consistently have premonitions. And the what happens is you have this thought, and then sometime later down the road, it could be tomorrow, it could be months from now, years from now down the line, that thing that you envisioned ends up coming true. Now, I've had lower levels of that. I can think of a couple different times where I've thought of something and it ended up coming true. Now, is that manifesting? Is that maybe having a thought and then manifesting that into reality later down the line? That's a conversation that could be had, and maybe something we'll end up talking about. But I think the most important part of this is listening to the experience and the experiencer. So we'll be getting into that, but I want to go ahead and go and touch on premonitions and deja vu, some of the definitions, so we can kind of get a educational approach on what it is perceived to be. Then we'll listen to the experiencer, and then we'll kind of go ahead and have some conversation at the end of the show. So, without further ado, I'm going to jump into the human ability to perceive premonitions. So, human fascination with premonitions, the ability to foresee or predict future events, is as old as civilization itself. Throughout history, tales of prophetic dreams, gut feelings, and intuitive flashes have permeated cultures worldwide. While some regard these experiences as supernatural or mystical, others seek scientific explanations rooted in psychology and neuroscience. Premonitions have been a prominent feature in mythologies, religious texts, and folklore. In ancient Greece, for instance, oracles such as the Pythia and Delphi were believed to possess the power to predict future events. Similarly, various indigenous cultures have shamans or spiritual leaders who interpret dreams and signs of as omens of future occurrences. These traditions suggest a long-standing belief in the human ability to perceive premonitions, often linked to a divine or spiritual source. Religious texts also abound with examples of premonition. For instance, in the Bible, Joseph's dreams foretell his rise to power in Egypt, while in Hinduism, the Mahabharata recount numerous instances of divine forewarnings. These cultural narratives have cemented the idea of premonitions as significant and often divine insights into the future. Now, we want to look at this from all angles, right? Because we want to tell the story, we want to figure out what premonitions are. We don't want to just we don't want to sit on one side, so being biased to what the thing is, right? We still want to take a middle of the road approach, so we want to hear both sides, right? So there are some skeptical observations on what they think premonitions are, and we kind of want to make sure that we look at all that, right? So from a psychological perspective, premonitions can be examined through the lens of the unconscious mind. Carl Jung, a pioneer in psychology, introduced the concept of synchronicity, referring to meaningful coincidences that seem to arise from the unconscious. Jung believed that premonitions might be manifestations of the unconscious mind processing information beyond the conscious awareness, leading to intuitive insights about future events. Modern psychology often attributes premonitions to cognitive processes such as pattern recognition and implicit learning. The human brain is adept to recognizing patterns and making predictions based on past experiences. This ability, essential for survival, can sometimes produce a sensation of, quote, knowing about future events. Additionally, the implicit learning, where the brain unconsciously absorbs information from the environment, might contribute to premonitory feelings. These unconscious processes can create a sense of foreboding or anticipation, even without explicit awareness of the underlying reasons. So, looking into some of the neuroscientific processes, neuroscience offers further insights into the phenomena of premonitions. The brain's capacity for processing vast amounts of information, often outside conscious awareness, is immense. Research has shown that the brain can detect and respond to subtle environmental cues, potentially leading to anticipatory feelings or behaviors. For instance, studies involving the prediction of random events have indicated that the brain might exhibit anticipatory responses before the events occur, although the mechanisms remain poorly understood. The amygdala, a region of the brain involved in emotional processing and threat detection, plays a crucial role in generating intuitive feelings. When exposed to subtle or ambiguous cues, the amygdala can trigger a feeling of unease or alertness, which might be interpreted as premonition. This neural response evolved to enhance survival by preparing for potential dangers that could underlie some premonitory experiences. So skeptics look at this and say, despite intriguing anecdotal and theoretical support, premonitions remain a topic within the scientific community. Skeptics argue that premonitions are often the result of cognitive biases such as hindsight bias, confirmation bias, and selective memory. People tend to remember instances when their premonitions were accurate, but forget the numerous times that they were not, creating an illusion of predictive ability. So, with that being said, we'll move into the deja vu and the phenomena of that. It's a little different, although I think it's it evolves from the same conscious place, right? And I'm sure there's scientific explanations for it as well, or theories rather, not necessarily explanations. But deja vu, just so we can cover that, and actually let me bring that up. Deja vu is a French term meaning already seen, describes the uncanny sensation that a current experience has already been experienced, despite evidence to the contrary. This phenomenon has intrigued philosophers, scientists, and lay people alike, prompting questions about the nature of memory, consciousness, and human perception. The sensation of deja vu has been documented for centuries, often described in literature and philosophy. In the late 19th century, the term deja vu was coined by French philosopher and researcher Émile Bourac. Before this formal naming, the experience was referred to in various ways, indicating its widespread recognition. Philosophers like Aristotle and later Descartes and Locke pondered similar experiences, though they did not use the term deja vu. They attributed such feelings to memory errors or metaphysical phenomena, reflecting the limited scientific understanding at the time. In various cultures, deja vu has been linked to supernatural or spiritual explanations. Some interpret it as evidence of past lives or precognitive ability, suggesting that the sensation arises from memories of previous existences or foreknowledge of future events. Now, with that being said, right? So a lot of people look at deja vu and say, hey, it's potentially a past life. I'm potentially remembering a past life that I had, and I'm recalling events from a past life. The way I look at deja vu is a little different because, I don't know. I've had theories about it, right? Deja vu Are you actually remembering something that has happened before, literally? It could be looked at as potentially, maybe this has happened to you before, not necessarily though in a past life. Maybe in a alternative existence, like dimensional, right? So maybe you in a different dimension, a parallel dimension, something happened to you, and then you recall it in this dimension. I've kicked this idea around. There's a lot of different ideas of where this could go, and we'll kind of get into that discussion after we hear the experiencer, uh, which we'll listen to in just a moment here. So let me actually go into premonitions and deja vu before we jump into our experiencer story. The humans, so this is premonition and deja vu. So, kind of comparatively. So the human's mind capacity to perceive premonitions and experience deja vu has long fascinated scholars, scientists, and the public. These phenomena, one characterized by an eerie sense of future events, the other by a sudden feeling of familiarity in unfamiliar situations, offer intriguing glimpses into the workings of the human consciousness. Premonitions, or the sensation of knowing something before it happens, have been reported throughout history. These experiences are often described as vivid dreams, gut feelings, or sudden insights that later align with actual events. While some attribute premonitions to supernatural or divine sources, scientific inquiry offers alternative explanations rooted in psychology and neuroscience. From a psychological perspective, premonitions can be seen as the brain's ability to recognize patterns and predict outcomes based on previous experiences. This skill, honed through evolution, enhances survival by allowing individuals to anticipate potential dangers. Cognitive processes such as implicit learning and intuition play significant roles here. Implicit learning ability enables the brain to unconsciously absorb and store information, which can later manifest as intuitive hunches or premonitory feelings. Deja vu. Deja vu, meaning already seen, which we talked about before, describes the sensation that a current experience has occurred. Like premonitions, deja vu has been documented across cultures and eras, often sparking philosophical and scientific debates. Modern theories of deja vu center on memory and perceptual processes. One prominent explanation is that deja vu results from a mismatch between sensory input and memory recall. When the brain processes a new experience, it may inadvertently trigger familiar memory pathways, creating a sense of recognition without a specific source. The misfiring could be due to minor lapses or delays in neural processing. Another theory posits that deja vu involves dual processing of information. If the brain processes sensory input through two parallel pathways and there is a slight delay or discrepancy between them, the experience may be perceived as familiar. This phenomena highlights the brain's complex information processing capabilities and the occasional glitches that occur. The human ability to perceive premonitions and experience deja vu provides the fascinating window into the mysteries of consciousness. While premonitions evoke the sense of knowing the future and deja vu elicits feelings of familiarity within the present, both phenomena reveal the brain's remarkable capabilities for prediction, memory, and perception. They challenge the conventional notions of time and reality, prompting deeper exploration into the nature of human consciousness. Now, scientific research progresses, we may uncover more about these experiences, enhancing our understanding of the mind and its profound complexities. So, essentially, in a nutshell, the mind is something that we don't fully understand. Premonitions and deja vu, potentially, I look at them as potential superpowers. Like I said, a lot of people experience this. And what we're going to do is we're going to go ahead and listen to our experiencer for today's show, who is someone that you all know, Aloha Dave M. He's going to talk about his experience with the phenomenon, his experience with premonitions and deja vu. So, without further ado, let me go ahead and bring in our guest for today, Mr. Aloha Dave. And Dave, hi, how are you today?
Sorry, I was having trouble with the mute button. I'm doing good, Rob. And yourself?
I'm doing great. I'm doing great. So I just kind of went over, information regarding premonitions and deja vu to kind of set the stage for the stories that you're about to get into here in your experience with this particular part of the phenomena. I just got finished saying how I look at premonitions and deja vu. I think it's really tapping into another part of the consciousness. Now, we'll get into talking about that more, but I definitely would like to hear about your experience with the phenomena. So if you wouldn't mind giving us some insight into some of the things that you may have experienced.
Sure. By the way, that was an excellent introduction to those particular topics. It was very good.
Awesome.
First of all, I think we're using the phenomena as a general word for everything that's related to either UAP, UFOs, the subject matter we're going to talk about today. So with that said, I have to set the stage a tiny bit. I grew up in Los Angeles, raised by a single mother and my grandmother, and my grandmother would take care of me during the daytime. When I was around 3 years old, as I recall, is when I really started to talk. But at the same time, I started learning how to read. And that's a story in itself. But I got pretty good at it. And starting off with magazines and then eventually with newspapers. So when I was 5, based on my memory, my grandmother was in the kitchen cooking. And I was looking at the newspaper, the daily newspaper, and I don't recall it was the LA Times. I think we had the LA Examiner or something like that as well. And all of a sudden there was a story about this plane crash that occurred in the LA area, and they gave vivid details about it. And when I saw that, I said, wait a minute, I dreamt about that about 3 weeks earlier. And it was pretty much exactly the way it went down in my dream. And the reason I remembered that then is because I remember being very frightened the day I woke up from that, what we refer to as a precognitive dream. And I didn't understand it. I thought this was just a nightmare. And so I didn't think much about it until, a couple of weeks later, and I read the article. So after I put the newspaper down, I went into the kitchen. I told my grandmother about what happened. And she didn't even look up. She just said nonchalantly, "Oh, that's clairvoyance, and it runs in the family." So I didn't give it much thought because I really didn't understand what clairvoyance was, and I kind of let it go. But I would continually have these types of events occur in my life, not daily, periodically. And you want to ask a question about that, or go on?
No, go on. Actually, what I would like to do is because I know you talked about the experience that you had with the plane crash. Are you able to kind of talk about how that played out in your mind? Like, what did you see leading up to the notion that there was going to be a plane crash, like step by step, if you have that information?
I didn't see it happen. In my what I saw was the aftermath.
Okay.
And also where it occurred.
Okay.
And that's what alarmed me, even at 5 years old. I'm reading this and thinking, well, that's odd. I just a couple of weeks earlier had that nightmare. I remembered it the next day, and it's almost exactly how I saw it. And I thought that was pretty, I'm a 5-year-old kid, and I didn't think much about it until I read the article. And then when my grandmother said the clairvoyance thing, I said, oh, okay, that was a new word for me to learn. I'd never heard that word yet. And I suppose I should have figured something. Well, later on, I probably started realizing something was a little unusual because my grandmother, apparently she was quite a tarot card reader. I'm not sure if I'm pronouncing that correctly or not. And we also had a Ouija board in the house. And I remember my mother in the evenings least probably once a week at least, my mother would have my grandmother read the tarot cards for her, and she was quite attentive and pretty, in the way as I recall it, she took it as that this is a serious way to kind of figure out how to conduct your life or make certain decisions, etc. And when we used the Ouija board, my grandmother was always the one in control. And I thought, this is interesting. I don't know if all families do this, but it's kind of interesting. And it's just only been recently when it really dawned on me that most likely what my grandmother was trying to explain is that psychic ability runs in our family on her side, and to her it was just normal. And so that's kind of the story at that point in time. The next thing, I'm not sure this has anything to do with the psychic aspect of this, but I had a very bad speech impediment when I was young. And to be honest with you, I have what is called Asperger's syndrome, which is basically high function autism. And so I had a problem in kindergarten, got expelled because of this. And then in first grade, I was going to a private Catholic school. And about a couple months after I was starting class, the school threatened to kick me out of there too. And if you understand autistic children, they don't quite understand how to, function yet. And so my mother rushed me to our family doctor, and he suggested, and that's the first time I heard the word autistic, but I didn't know how to spell it, so I couldn't find it in the dictionary. But he suggested speech therapy. And so my mother found this drama school, which was very popular in the 50s in Los Angeles, if you are aware of that. And there was a woman there who was, I think she was probably considered a licensed speech therapist, but she also taught music and voice lessons, etc. And I guess she and my mother decided to give me singing lessons to see if that would help. And it did. When I was singing a song, I could enunciate everything clearly without talking a mile a minute. And but when I stopped singing, back to the other problem of talking too fast and people having a difficult time understanding me. But what was interesting, right when I started that, she would hand me the sheet music with the lyrics on it. I would read it 2 times and have it memorized. So later on in life, I figured out that was probably a photographic memory. So I don't know if that has anything to do with this or not. It's just, a side bit. The next thing that, staying on the phenomena side of this, something did happen in 2nd grade. We can go back to that if you want. It's regarding symbols. So you let me know where you want to.
Yeah, no, definitely. Yeah, let's talk about it.
All right. Well, this is something that just occurred to me this year. It was really kind of weird. I participated in UFO X, and I used to be on there quite a bit, just as an observer and a retweeter, but never really sharing anything. And one of the people I follow on there posts very good things, and he's not into a UFO, a UAP, or what is it, X fight, whatever they're calling it now. But he posted something regarding symbols that were supposedly, I guess, from the Aztec crash, assuming that occurred. And I believe that was the one. And when I saw and he linked it to a Reddit post. And when I started looking at this, I said, I said a 4-letter word myself. But it reminded me of something that happened in the 2nd grade. Back then, because I'm old, this is probably in 58, roughly, 59. And we used to use these 3-ring notebooks that looked like they had a denim cover on them. It was very common. It was kind of a rough material. And I remember in 2nd grade, I would get bored. And the front inside cover, I decided to create my own alphabet. And I came up with at least 20 to 30 symbols. And I remember those, not all of them, but most of them. And when I saw this post, I was looking, this is exactly what very close to what I was putting down that. I don't know how that happened. I don't know if it's just coincidence or if there's something else to this. I've only shared that with one other person besides you, and I believe that person said it might have been a download. So I don't know. I'm just bringing this into the picture. The next thing, going a few more years, I was around 11 or 12, and I realized that I seemed to have some kind of a unusual way of functioning, and I thought it was odd. And then I forget how I exactly learned about it, but it's the subject of ESP, extrasensory perception. So I got very active in researching the subject matter, and I studied the works of J.D. Ryan and any other author I could find on this subject out of the library. And I kind of concluded that I think I had that ability, what they were talking about. And I tie that back to what my grandmother kind of giving me an alert that there may be psychic abilities that run in my family. So the other thing is that's kind of connected to this. I have a female cousin who's 3 weeks younger than me, and we were very close growing up. And right around just before I started researching the ESP, her mother and my mother, who were sisters, got into a fight and weren't speaking, even though we lived pretty close. And so I hadn't seen my cousin for about 3 or 4 years. And when they finally, our respective mothers finally made up, and my cousin and I got back together, we discovered we both started researching ESP at the same time, which I thought was, that's interesting.
Mm-hmm.
And we both had we were around 16 at this point, and we both had pretty significant knowledge about that subject matter, and to the point where we would hang out together, and we would tease about starting our own clinic at some point in time in the future when we got older. So that's another. It could be coincidence, but I'm not sure.
Yeah, probably not coincidence. I mean, and it sounds like just from those examples and those stories that you laid out, that definitely you had, you were more tuned into the conscious side of yourself. And that's kind of what I wanted to look at, because that's I think the part that we haven't fully understood, and I think really probably ties in completely to the phenomena. So premonitions, right? So you see an accident before it happens. I've heard of definitely other people say the same thing. It kind of reminds me of that movie Final Destination, right? Where you see this catastrophic event, and then you do things to, you take steps to avoid, and I wonder if you could use your powers for that. Had you ever had another vision ahead, before the incident happened?
Yes.
Outside of that, is this like things that happen throughout your life?
Yeah, as I mentioned, as I messaged you privately, it never occurred to me to try to keep a record of these things. Mm-hmm. I never expected ever to be talking about it, because this is the first time I have ever talked about it with anybody. So awesome. Yeah, and from what I've seen from watching other interviews with other people, I've heard experts say, yeah, people won't talk about it because they're afraid that people will think they're crazy, and I agree with that. So, yeah.
And I want to say something to that, because I was going to actually start the show with saying that that it in a lot of cases it ends up being hard for people to come to grips with what it is, the reality of what it is that they're experiencing. And this is no different. In on this show, it's probably going to be a lot of that, right? Which means you don't have to come up on camera, as our guest today chooses not to do so. That's fine. And being that this is the first time with you speaking publicly, or really telling anyone about this, is another step towards I guess maybe your own therapy, or your being able to kind of process this amongst others, which this is what this show is for. So I'm just glad that you chose to do that, and I really do appreciate it. And you may actually open the door for others to do the same thing. But I do understand it's a hard thing to do, and because of the stigma but you're amongst a lot of people here who totally understand what you're going through and are here to support you as well. So don't want you to feel nervous in any way, and just know that we are appreciating you opening up about your own personal experiences.
Yeah, I appreciate that. Yeah, that was one reason I didn't mind doing it. I started being sort of a regular SOAR fan, I think earlier this year, and I probably watched the SOAR programs off and on before that. But for some reason, it became. It seemed to me this year I was very interested in all the topics that were being discussed, because a lot of this stuff is new to me. The cryptids idea, that's new to me. I didn't know anything about that. I've always heard about Bigfoot, Sasquatch, and thought, well, maybe, but I never gave it too much thought. But what the other thing that I stopped researching the parapsychology area decades ago. I got on with my life. I went to college. Well, I was in the military, but then after that, went to university, got degrees, started working, et cetera, et cetera. And so I didn't give it much thought. But I always had at least some of the memories of the research I did on it, and I just assumed that it was, for anytime I maybe occasionally would try to joke with somebody about it regarding the ESP, and it didn't, and everybody it's only been probably a few people in my life, and they're all skeptical about it. So I don't bring it up. But if anybody's interested in a book about that, which I really liked, was ESP Enigma by Dr. Diane Hennessy Powell. It's an excellent book, and there's a lot of very interesting data in there, including about the CIA. So
definitely. Now, what would be, so being that, at this present moment, now that you have been able to kind of, process a lot of this, and then also learn about other parts of the phenomena and how these things may be interconnected, like, what is your view now on the whole consciousness side, and how do you look at premonitions and deja vu? Like, what are your thoughts on, are these superhuman abilities? Are these, senses we haven't tapped into yet? What is your view on that?
Now, I have kind of researched that quite a bit over the last couple of years. And I would say they are superpowers, but we all have the ability. We all have the ability. And the one thing I think is quite interesting, and I would say that there's a couple of top layers to all of this. I was watching an interview on Vinnie Adams' channel with Dr. Michael Masters earlier today. And Dr. Masters, I really like him. He's quite an interesting individual. And he made a comment I thought was spot on. He said, we really don't understand space and time yet. Theoretical physicists have their theories, and mathematically they can try to, make a case for them. But we don't exactly understand it yet completely. And where I would go with this, the other question, I guess, is kind of the burning question du jour. Does the brain create consciousness, or is consciousness basically just occupy the physical body? Those are the two questions. My personal thought is, no, the consciousness occupies the body and uses the brain as a conduit to interact with the physical world.
I agree. So what do you think is happening in I guess that's pretty deep. So in the moment of a premonition, do you think that you're, are you looking into the future at that moment? Do you feel, or are you manifesting something to happen in the future? Which side would you fall on?
Well, that's a good question. I did take physics in high school, and I know a little bit about physics, not a lot. But one of the theories that I was very interested in several years ago, I guess it was first introduced, was string theory. But I like that I've seen several physicists give the example where they take the sheet of paper and fold it in half and stick a pencil through it. That's kind of my thought about this, is that we're traversing space and time in these instances. And how we're doing it, I don't know. I have a feeling I know a little bit about the Sumerian tablets and the Anunnaki story, etc. And I believe some of the theories are that when in theory, if anybody buys into this, I mean, I don't know. Supposedly with that story, how that story goes, from what I understand, is that basically they kind of meddled with human DNA and primates in general and created what modern day humans, so to speak. And what I understand the story goes, and again, it's a story, is that they accidentally tweaked the DNA too well and turned on some of these capabilities that they probably have. And I mean, it's a good story, and a lot of things in the Bible kind of support some of these notions. And so I always just look at the big picture and think, well, maybe something to all of this. But the bottom line is, I think consciousness is the key to the whole thing. That's the key to the puzzle.
So what like for someone who is maybe not yet identified what it is that they're experiencing when they have these premonitions or experience deja vu, like what would be being a person that has experienced it and kind of been able to look back on it to realize that this is potentially an ability? Like, what advice would you give to someone that's just starting to figure this out?
Well, I guess the first thing is, I don't think it's the subject matter that everybody's interested in. I think it's a selective few. And I think if you notice anything odd, that you say, well, how did I do that? Or how did I know to do that? Then and if you are interested in the subject matter, then you might want to ponder that and reverse engineer how that occurred. The deja vu thing, I think, is quite fascinating because I'll give you another example on let's see. I think it was. I want to thank you again for your Thursday show on SOAR. That was excellent, and
Yeah.
you pulled out an archive that I had never seen, and I'm very familiar with Dr. Simeon Hein. I'm subscribed to his channel. I have been for a while, and I really like his viewpoint about all of this because he kind of supports my thought that we all have the ability. As a matter of fact, he said it in there, as I recall, and that we just have to learn how to, tap into it and utilize it. And it's just like being an athlete, or if you're an individual athlete for individual competition. Let's take figure skating. If first time you put figure skates on, you're going to fall on your, on the ice. But eventually, if you're good at it and you hone the skill, you'll be participating in the Olympics. So it's kind of the same thing. It depends on your interest, number one. If you're curious about it, I think curiosity is like the number one attribute that one needs to have to really want to pursue to find out what they may be capable of. Most people probably, depending on your age and your lifestyle, etc., they're just interested in having a roof over their head and food on the table and feeding their family, assuming they have one. So not everybody is going to have the luxury of the time to do the research or to try to ponder it further and to think through it. But I really like what Dr. Hein and Bob McGuire were talking about, and the relationship to quantum entanglement, quantum mechanics, et cetera, and how that might relate to remote viewing. Because I think remote viewing is also connected to this whole premonition and deja vu, et cetera.
Yeah.
Yeah. Now, the way Dr. Hein talked about it, he said you're not physically going to a spot when you're remote viewing. And I tend to agree with that, but I kind of disagree in another way. My viewpoint on this, I've never trained in remote viewing. I can do it to some extent, but I have a natural way that I do it. And I think my theory, and it's just a theory, is that it's basically connected to astral projection. You're taking your consciousness and putting it out in the universe, trying to get on the right frequency to interpret what you're looking for. And if now supposedly really good remote viewers can get up to around 65% accuracy rate, which is really, really good. And I believe Ingo Swann was at that or a little bit higher on a regular basis. Now, we have a mutual channel friend, Thomas Fessler, and he has Rick Doty on frequently. Rick Doty is very interesting. He's controversial, but I enjoy listening to him. And he mentioned one thing that most people that are study the remote viewing concept or they're interested in it assume the CIA stopped doing that years ago. And he said, no, that's not true at all. They have actually modified that. And they have a new way of doing things called, TPA, I think it is, Targeted Projection Acquisition. Mm-hmm. And he made the claim, and he said it's extremely confidential and top secret. Hardly anybody knows about it. And that he said they'd get up to 90% accuracy on a regular basis with that. I have no idea how they do it, but what their methods are, other than the original methods that were taught by Ingo Swann through SRI, et cetera. But anyway, it's kind of interesting. But again, in my view, you're taking your consciousness and projecting it, and you're finding a particular frequency and resonance, which is what Dr. Hein was talking about in that wonderful archive video that you showed the other night.
Yeah. And I do agree. I do also feel like remote viewing is part of the whole thing. Like, I just don't think, we there's different parts of it. So we say premonition, we say deja vu, we say remote viewing, which is overall under the umbrella of consciousness. And, the way I feel about it is when we have those moments that we're getting a peek into those abilities, just we're being made aware that those abilities are there. And it's so when you get into like government programs and Stargate and whatever, the TPA that you mentioned there, that they are trying to figure out how to harness those abilities and use them for specific purposes. And it's it's a look into what it is that we may be put, the possibilities that we have when it comes to consciousness. And and it's a natural ability. I agree with you that I think everyone has, and it's just being able to identify when you have those experiences that's what they are, because some people will have a premonition and may not think anything about it. Just like I read earlier, it can be described away by skeptics is, somehow your mind has, made you believe or made you feel like you predicted something when really it was just the information that you have now. Mm-hmm. And then you're kind of perceiving that as something that maybe you thought of at an earlier time. But I totally believe that it's an ability and something that we can totally do. Looking into the chat, I just wanted to see if anybody had any input on premonitions, and if anybody had any input on deja vu. Let's see. Just kind of looking here. If anybody has anything, you can definitely put it in here. So with that being said, I really do appreciate you coming in and sharing your experience with the phenomena, being the first guest to step up and have the courage to do so. Because like I said, you would think this is something, we know there's a lot of experiencers out there that have experienced this, and then maybe even what I discussed, the shadow people, UFOs, paranormal, and then all the other things that fall up under the phenomena. But it takes that, big first step to be able to stand on a platform and kind of talk it through. Some people may never do it. Some people may potentially get the courage to do it. So I will kind of see how this plays out, because maybe we'll have a lot of people that'll be willing to come in and do this as you did today. Or maybe we'll just have a bunch of people that, aren't ready to do so yet. So it's kind of something that you can't really control. But once again, I do appreciate you stepping forward and being willing to share your experience.
Can I leave you with one last thing
Yeah.
regarding this? I was married for many years. I've been divorced for many years too, and my ex-wife and I was, after we were together for X couple of years, whenever, I would know what she was going to say next, and she picked up on it. And the reason I bring this up, and for your viewers to ponder, is because what Dr. Hein talked about in that archived video is that it gets down to frequency and resonance. And when you when you hook into the frequency of the other person, so to speak, that's when you're making a bidirectional connection. Now, my ex-wife could kind of do it too. She knew what I was going to say, and I knew what she was going to say, or what's thinking about. And this went on, most of our married life after we're together for maybe the first couple of years. So for your viewers, if they have a close partner, close family member, think about that. If you have some kind of a connection that way, where you tend to know to call them to make sure they're okay. We hear stories about that all the time. One sibling will get a feeling that something's wrong with their sibling, and sure enough, it's true. So that's one way to start thinking about it. But the consciousness is the key, and the frequency and the resonance is what supports that whole thing.
Definitely. Awesome. That's awesome you brought that up, because actually you're speaking about intuition, right? Which is
exactly
for surely another part of that, and really could be compared with premonition and deja vu. That's why I say we have different names for all of these individual things, but they are all one thing under consciousness, and it is for sure an ability, and it's not just a lucky guess, or it's not a false memory when it comes to deja vu. I don't believe that, because we've had too many different cases where, and just like you said with the government trials, they know for a fact that there's something to our ability when it comes to consciousness. So I think we have enough to show that this part of the phenomena is for sure a real thing, and it's about people just identifying with that ability, and just knowing when you're experiencing that. And just like you said with the intuition part, I think everyone across the board has experienced either this themselves or they've been a part of it. Like for sure, mother's intuition. I think, for some reason, all mothers, all women, it appears, are able to display this ability. And so if you've ever dealt with the mother out there who just called you in a moment that you needed a call, she was picking up your frequency. And and I really do think that's all related. So I'm glad you brought that up, because that actually completes the picture as far as this part of the phenomena goes. What I would like to do here is I'd like for you to go ahead and see, do you have anything that you want to leave with the audience or with the viewers, the future viewers of this, before we go ahead and go to the chat and then get ready to wrap it up?
Just be curious. Always be curious, and it'll stimulate your mind. And the more you're curious about it, the more you'll learn about it, and maybe you'll figure out how to tap into it.
That is awesome advice. Aloha, Dave. Definitely thank you so much for coming on to share your experience. I'm going to go ahead and get ready to wrap this thing up, and we will talk again soon.
Thanks, Rob.
All right, Dave. Take care. All right, guys. So premonitions and deja vu. So another part of the phenomenon that I definitely think everybody can resonate with. I'm sure most of you, especially after listening to our experiencer today, Aloha Dave, I think a lot of people can align with that feeling or that sensation. And maybe you also have a story that you could tell in regards to that. You can definitely especially if you're on replay watching this, leave some of your experiences in the comment section. That would be awesome, and it would help people down the line who do watch this video to go ahead and kind of have other experiences to resonate with as well. So it would be awesome if you guys would be able to comment in the comment section. Make sure also that you hit likes on the video as well. One thing I want to do is, like I say, we are technically still in a beta testing phase for this show, so definitely different tweaks are going to be made to the show. But I think we have a pretty solid base here to continue with what it is that we're doing. So we got 2 episodes in. Episode 1 was my own experience, UFOs, the paranormal and shadow people. This episode was Premonitions and Deja Vu. 2 awesome encounters, 2 awesome experiences that were told on both shows. And we want to make sure that we continue to do this. So you guys have my information. Hit up in the comment section or the community section of my page here. And if you are willing to come in and speak about your experience with the phenomena, I would love to have you go ahead and sign up for that. And, we're going to, it's been 2 weeks since the last one. We're going to go ahead and make sure that this is actually a weekly thing. So I need to go ahead and get the list, get 5 or 6, 7 people on a list so we can start doing this weekly. And then we may even potentially play with having multiple experiencers per show, just depending on how many we get to sign up. So I appreciate you guys coming in as we still test out our format here and kind of get this thing locked down, because I think this is going to be a special show and a special place to kind of curate and have all these different experiences for people to kind of sift through, align with, and maybe unlock something within themselves. So with that being said, let me go ahead and take a look at the chat. We didn't really get to do this in the beginning, but I definitely just want to thank the people that came through here, that are in here right now, at least. Tomat Man, Here I Am, our guest here, Aloha Dave, Jennifer for sure. Let's see, T-Bone, Dragonfly, Crystal J, Captain Jones. Let's see, Flat Six, Kitty Catty Whack. Let's see, Drew Banky in the building. Woo Riders DG. And yeah, Woo Riders DG. I haven't got a chance to take a look at the Jason Sands. Was actually catching up on some rest, but I'll be looking at that today. Maybe we can talk about it tomorrow in the after hours. Let's go ahead and move down here. Let's see. Christine Lynn, Salty D, appreciate you guys. Let's see, moving down the list here. Long Island Bigfoot, Mike. Hey, thanks for coming in. And yep. And anyone else who catches this on replay, right? Like I said, we're in beta testing, still flushing things out on the show. I think we got a pretty good solid hour in. This is roughly about the time that I want to take with this show, maybe an hour. I'm still playing with that, somewhere between an hour, maybe an hour and a half. We'll go ahead and figure that out as we go. But I appreciate you guys coming along for the ride. Once again, helping this make this a special place to get together and talk about your experience with the phenomena. So make sure you guys sign up. I will be seeing you guys soon. Check me out on the after hours tomorrow. You guys have a great rest of your evening. Once again, thank our guest, Aloha Dave, for coming in and sharing his experience with the phenomena. We'll be waiting for you to share yours. You guys have a great rest of your night. Take care.
I got nightmares in my head, I fear that the thoughts build up until I can't hear, that my mind fills up into a creature, and it haunts me somewhere much deeper.
Anxiety, filling up every space, no privacy. And silently, it could build and build until you finally see, whoa, it's taking over, damn no closure, moving closer. No exposure, I just wanna be a loner. Some can't stay sober, looking over all their shoulders, like moving boulders just to get out of the home. It sucks, I've had enough, I don't wanna feel the stuck under the rug, all my problems that I shove.
I got nightmares in my head, I fear that the thoughts build up until I can't hear, that my mind fills up into a creature, and it haunts me somewhere much deeper. I got nightmares in my head, I fear that the thoughts build up until I can't hear, that my mind fills up into a creature, and it haunts me somewhere much deeper.